Hi class, so now we're looking at chapter 8, in your text, social emotional development in early childhood. Again, this is from 24 months to 6 or 7 years of age. Some might go to 5 to 6, others 6 to 7 years of age. It starts out looking at how we view ourselves, and that's this developmental stage that they're going through. The text begins by looking at initiative versus guilt. This is Erikson's theory of development. And he says that during this stage is when they develop a sense of shame or self-guidance, this inner voice associated with their actions. When we look at initiative, this is giving them a little task to do, maybe feeding the dog or feeding the fish, and helping them to be successful in that, encouraging that initiative. They'll step out, I want to do this, helping them to be successful. If we don't help them to be successful or don't encourage that initiative, it could develop in a sense of guilt for them, according to Erikson. Just looking at my notes again, guys. Emotional development is a time of self-conscious emotions, pride, embarrassment, shame, and guilt come about. It's also a time when they're able to understand that the same event can elicit two emotions. And so in the class, what I do is I'll have somebody in the class who's had a pet, maybe a pet they've had for years and years and years, who passed away due to old age. and while it's a sad thing, maybe the dog or the cat has been arthritic and is in pain or has cancer. And so while it's sad to see we'll just say in this case, the dog dying, it can also have relief in knowing that the dog is no longer in pain. And so that's what they mean as we go through this stage. And when you think about it, wow, the development that occurs for them to be able to understand that the same event can elicit two emotions is really pretty amazing. They also see an improvement in relationships with their peers. This is a time of looking at emotion coaching versus emotion dismissing parents, especially as they're interacting more and more with their peers. And unfortunately, in America, we've got a little problem with bullying going on. So it's helping them to navigate through that process. Emotion coaching is helping them to navigate through that process. Emotion dismissing is just saying, you know what, it's only the child they didn't really know what they were talking about, or just being dismissive of it, as opposed to helping the child to grapple with the events that are occurring. It's also a time of moral development. We've got moral feelings, moral reasoning, and moral behavior. So moral feelings, the famous Oedipus conflict, where guilt and empathy supports moral development. Moral reasoning, they talk about Piaget's, his heteronomous approach, which is from 4 to 7 years of age. And that's where little guys think of imminent justice. If you've ever been in a playground where children are playing, say, little Tommy knocks over Mary, and all what will happen initially is all the kids will stop. And that's because they're thinking of imminent justice. That lightning bolt's going to come down and strike Tommy right away. And so that's from 4 to 7. And then there's a transitional period around age 10. They have more of an autonomous view that, well, you know what? Mary is kind of klutzy. Maybe it wasn't Tommy in the first place, that type of thing. It's also a time when they look at that moral behavior is contextual. That is very much, it's very much the environment that they're in, where the child may not steal in the classroom, but he's okay with stealing from their little sister or little brother at home. That's what they mean by that. Just again, looking over my notes, seeing highlights that I like to talk about. This is one thing that's really so fascinating. Walter Mischel talked about the ability to resist temptation or gratification. And I gotta tell you, in my own private practice, how many times I've seen that inability to resist gratification resulting in real problems with interactions with others, or even their own self-worth, because they feel like they're not getting that gratification. They don't want to delay gratification. They have the famous marshmallow experiment, which is so cool. It's where you put a marshmallow in front of the child and you tell them if they can wait 10 minutes or maybe 20 minutes, I think it's 20 minutes, that you'll give them another marshmallow in place of it. And so seeing the child wrestling with this process is really pretty amazing. But what's interesting is how some of the research lends one to believe that those individuals that can delay gratification are more likely to be successful in adulthood, something that we can test at a young age, 5 to 7. Gender identity is the next thing they talk about. When we look at gender identity, we look at different aspects of it. First, a gender identity, the term gender, didn't really come into the forefront until Sandra Day O'Connor from Arizona, the first female Supreme Court judge, made kind of a concern because they asked her, state your name and your sex, and she said, you don't want to know my sex. You want to know my gender. And so she really brought that into the forefront of society. And of course now it's brought it to new levels as we wrestle with what gender identity is. The different components, there's the biological influences. This is, the XY chromosome or the XX chromosome. There's also a whole host of chromosomal abnormalities that result in some challenges to what type of gender we are in. Turner syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome are some examples of those. Social influences, another aspect. Social theories of gender. There's three of them. There's a social role theory, and that is how societies and cultures around the world view males and females. How are they typically viewed in society? Tasks that they do, their interactions with each other. That's a social role theory, an example of social influences. Then there's a psychoanalytical theory of gender, and that's Freud's famous Oedipus and Electra complex, although I think he was doing a little bit too much cocaine as he came up with his theories on that one. And then there's the social cognitive theory of gender, and that's the role that parents and peers play with a child as they're developing who they are from a gender perspective. And then the last one is cognitive influences. And remember thinking back about Piaget and his schemas about how we make sense of the world. There's a gender component too. What makes sense for them from a schema? Those are shortcuts as we organize the world into male and female behavior. Parenting styles are discussed with Diana Baumrind, 4 parenting styles, and she's has really stood the test of time as far as her theory is concerned. There's authoritarian, that's my way or the highway. That's usually not used so often in America. We see it more often in the Middle East, some Asian cultures as well. Authoritative, that's typically an American style approach to parenting where there's a give and take, there's associated with rules and behaviors. And then there is neglectful, and of course that's abuse and those type of things. And then there's indulgent, and when they describe indulgent, it describes the parents as being highly involved with their children. You think, oh, that's probably a good thing. The problem is that they're over-involved, so they're really too engaged in what the child is doing and not allowing the child to develop into their own person. Corporal punishment is discussed. Corporal punishment is spanking. There's been some debate about what role spanking plays. I personally, in my own family, have had maybe 5 spankings in the Reyes family. So it's the thing that's used last, and typically it's only used when there is a very dangerous situation where a child could lose a limb or eye or could be killed. Those are times when I would engage in spanking. And then the key thing with spanking is that you got to be calm. The if a child sees an out of control parent spanking them, that's not helping. It's about learning. That's what spanking is about. It's about learning from the activity that was so dangerous that they could have been killed. There's all sorts of ways of managing punishment without spanking, but again, it's not illegal, and it's something that we in America use. Settling rivalry, if there is a handling it, intervening is probably the best. Admonish or threaten, not good, or doing nothing is not good. They talked about Birth Order with Alfred Adler and Kevin Lehman, which is so cool. You've got to get his book, Kevin Lehman's book on birth order. He's a hilarious man who is a professor emeritus from ASU, and he's just he brings it to reality. And it's basically based off of statistics. Working parents, does it harm the kids? Not much research to support that. Divorced families, should we stay together for the kids? It's really what's best for the children. If the children see such a conflictual home that they're not able to grow because the parents are fighting too much, then it might be better for the children for the parents to divorce. However, in the same token, when parents divorce, if the custodial parent, maybe the custodial parent has mental illness and they get custody of the child, probably in that case it's better for them to stay together, because that parent with mental illness, or say they're an alcoholic or a drug addict, are not going to be able to provide the support for that child as if the two parents were together. And then the last thing they talk about is television and violence. Most of the research shows that there's a positive correlation between violence and watching violence on TV or violent video games. And so with that said, guys, that is an introduction to Chapter 8. All right. Thank you so much, guys.